Hello and welcome to the Improviding Life podcast. We have the specialist guest today. I am an official groupie and have been for probably like 5 years now. We have Rachel Starr with us.
Hello.
I love like introducing people based on how their energy feels to me, and then I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. Beyond being a groupie, what I love most about Rachel is the ability to bring so much warmth and wonder into things that could be very heady and have perfectionist vibes. And instead, you're like, we're just going to party through it and make it so accessible. And I really appreciate that about you. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you. What a nice introduction. Let's see, how do I introduce myself? I'll give some of my stats. So I'm a California girl who lives in England now, and I've been here for like 16 years, still have my accent, but I love the expat life. And it's brought me so many amazing things, including this beautiful personal development journey. I had my dark night of the soul during my Saturn return and realized a lot of things about myself. Number one being that I felt like I didn't know myself very well. And so that brought me down this path of self discovery through astrology first and then human design and tarot and meditation and all the things, of course. And I just became obsessed with cosmic systems. And I just realized that they were this incredible gift that we have to help us understand ourselves and help us understand other people. Because as a Libra, I truly believe that like our purpose on earth is to be in relationships, is to love. And so, what better way than, understanding yourself and understanding others? So I went on this journey. I left my corporate job, had a baby in COVID, and then was like, I'm never going back. And I really went full speed into my business. And so now I work for myself full time. It's crazy, scary, amazing, exhilarating. It's a wild ride. And I'm a coach. I run courses. I teach people astrology. I teach people human design, and all of the things. And I'm building an incredible community called Cosmic Queen online. So that's like, I think probably a good introduction to me. A couple of weird things about me. I love like romance books, which is not weird. Actually, it's extremely common and publishers are realizing this now. But I love alien romance and monster romance, and I want to write some coming up. So I'm working on that in the background. It's a big hobby of mine, which I just love.
I absolutely love all of this. Thank you so much. And I start off every guest episode with using a random word generator, and then that word gives people something to respond to and starts a
Oh my
conversation.
God, that's so fun.
Yeah, and when
Okay,
I
let's
pulled this
improv.
word, I was like, of course this is Rachel's word. Are you ready for it? Hold your
Yes.
tits. Publicity. What are your first thoughts that come up with publicity? I know it's such a Rachel word. Hmm.
This is so good. My Gemini moon, like, I just want to go straight into. Is there a question or do I just start?
You just go. Yeah, absolutely. You just go. Where does it
Go.
take us?
Okay, publicity. This is fabulous. So I'm obsessed with kind of the concept of, oh, it's getting really dark here. It looks like it's gonna rain. But I'm really obsessed with the concept of kind of celebrity, fame, visibility, confidence, self-love. It's kind of a Venn diagram, like they all kind of go together. And I'm very interested in, people that have skills and talents who want their work to be seen and how that affects them, how that affects their story and their journey, and how that affects other people. And so when I started my business, I was really focused on coaching people around like business. And I still do this a lot. I mostly work with entrepreneurs, but I realized that my true kind of gift is around branding, which I think is definitely like a sister topic to publicity, right? It's like people who want to be visible, want to be seen, want their work to have a bigger impact in the world, and they want to be out there. And there's so much that comes up around that, and especially nowadays, the like, what do you call it? The essence of celebrity, or like the perception of celebrity, the truths around celebrity is completely changing. And it's perfect that we're recording this podcast now, because anyone who's listening back to this, a week ago we just had the Met Gala. And the Met Gala, in 2024 is going to go down in history, I think, for being absolutely a turning point when people saw the publicity that, people are getting for around fashion, wealth, money, influence. And people were getting extremely frustrated with how that was juxtaposed against, like the war, and Palestinians, and everything that's happening with the war in Gaza, because that's the day that Israel entered Rafah. And it's an interesting thing because now there's this whole movement about blocking celebrities, removing, their influence, stopping people who are not like on the side of human rights, from benefiting from our attention. And when you think about publicity, like this is kind of not really happened before, especially if I'm thinking about the US. Like, I don't know that there's been this big of a kind of movement to call out celebrities for not being in integrity or not being aware or not or being out of touch with like what people are really experiencing, even beyond the war, what just common people are experiencing, economically, in mental health, like everything. And so I think the nature and the culture around celebrity is changing. We no longer are putting celebrities on pedestals. We now only want to give our money and our attention to people who we feel have integrity and who kind of jive with our values, whatever your values are. Like you may disagree with me, whoever's listening, like on my view of the war or on my view of certain social issues. But there are people out there who would be really excited to hear about what I have to say and would therefore want to invest with me because of what I have to say. And that's a shift, right? Because in the past, like what was it they said to LeBron, just shut up and dribble, right? That used to be which is terrible, but that used to be the way that we looked at celebrity and publicity, is just like, well, you just stay in your lane, you just do your thing, we don't want to hear about your views on anything else other than like the one thing that you do. And I think that that's absolutely changing. I think anyone that does that is going to really miss out on building a strong community, on connecting with people on a heart level. Saturn in Pisces, this is the season of being responsible. Like this is about responsibility in our spiritual journey. And so, yeah, anyway, that's my quick riff on publicity and celebrity. Is just, I think it's all about values. And of course I would say that because in human design, my sun is in the gate of values. So I'm seeing this and I'm like, yes, this is my time. Like I get it. And I need to step up myself, because it can be scary to speak out about things that, you think might be controversial or that not everyone will agree with you, or maybe you'll get canceled, right? It can be scary, but I think it's absolutely necessary. And North Node in Aries, I think, would agree with me.
Well, thank you for all that. I'm like salivating on it. Well, and I love that. I don't think I knew or remembered that your sun gate was values. And so what
Mhm.
was
Yes, it
funny is
is.
the question already brewing in my mind as you were sharing was, where in someone's human design chart would you orient them to have a practice of identifying, sitting with their values, practicing actually leading from their values? Because as you were referencing the absolute fuck shit of how LeBron is treated, in terms of stay in your lane,
Yeah.
this
Yes.
idea of what would it be like to live through our lanes, right? So like this idea
Mhm.
of like, oh, actually our lanes are sort of these like value pillars and how they're taking us
Yes.
forward. Do you have
Mhm.
any thoughts or riffs on that of like where in
Yes.
charts people can, yeah, start to have that relationship and share
Mm.
that outwardly?
Yes, I think that's such a good question. Let me just marinate. There's so many different ways I could answer that. I think I want to look at astrology and human design. Let's look at both really quick. I think in the astrology, sometimes it's a little easier to see, not easier to see values, but maybe it's more quickly apparent. So looking at, for example, Mercury, which is how our mind conceptualizes and thinks about the world. So the sign that you have Mercury in is probably going to tell us a lot about how you think, or it's going to tell you a lot about how you think, and how you perceive things. So that's one place that you can look for indicators of like, am I thinking in alignment in a way is my perspective in alignment with who I am? And I'll give an example. And then the moon sign as well, because the moon sign is emotional needs and it can also be connected to stability and security. And I think values are so like, they're so deep, they're so entrenched in like how we were raised, but also like what we believe life is about. Like, it's so deep that I think looking at the moon sign, because it's an emotional depth, like that would be an interesting thing to look at. Yeah, you could look at Venus as well, but let's focus on Mercury and also Saturn. But let's look at Mercury and Moon. So like I'll give myself as an example. My Mercury is in Scorpio. And what's yours? Do you remember?
Mine is Virgo conjunct my sun, so I have the same
Oh
human
yeah.
design gate as well.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
it's
so
so
I'm
funny.
loving on
Yeah.
your response. Yeah, go ahead, go
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ahead.
So yeah, so just think about me. So Mercury and Scorpio, I think like a Scorpio. So the way I see the world is in power dynamics, and I'm looking at like, well, who has power and who doesn't, who's misusing their power and who isn't. So I really care about things like injustice, all that kind of stuff like riles me up. Whereas maybe someone with a different Mercury wouldn't necessarily see it that way. They'd see it a different way. If you had Mercury in Sagittarius, maybe your core value of how you perceive things is more about freedom and art. And so more like that. Mercury in Virgo, that's an interesting one. I think because Virgo is such an interesting sign. Like it's because it's an earth sign, but it's mutable, so that it's changeable, flexible. But I think ultimately what Virgo really wants is it wants things to be like true. I think it wants things to be true. It wants things, integrity is definitely a Virgo thing for sure. It's an earth sign thing. So like integrity, and you want to know that you have all the facts. So someone with Mercury and Virgo might perceive kind of what's going on in the world, and they're like, I want to know the history. Where does this come from? Right? They're like, give me all the facts, give me all the dates, give me all the information. And so if they were to stand up and give a speech about whatever controversial topic, they're going to bring all the history. They're going to have all the receipts, all the information. That's very Virgo, right? Whereas for me, I'm going to talk about like the psychology, like the power at play, the hidden things, the taboo. Like I'm going to focus more on that. So that's an interesting way of kind of answering your question. And then with the moon sign is not about logic, right? It's about emotion and emotional needs. And so, for me, like emotional needs for my moon in Gemini is very much about communication and sharing ideas. And so when I saw the Met Gala, I was like, okay, I want to share my thoughts. Like I was not like, oh, I need to just think to myself. Like I was like, I gotta talk about this. And so I made a couple of videos about Rafa, about the Met Gala, about what's going on. I shared Macklemore's song. So this is very Gemini. It's like, let me share information, let me talk about my thoughts. And so that's a way that I can emotionally process, but also it's how I kind of express what's important to me. So yeah, I hope that
Yeah,
helps.
I love all this. And yeah, what's coming up for me is I hear you share your own experience and then riff a bit on mine is so having my conscious sun and Mercury in gate 64, the gate of confusion,
Oh
I'm really
yeah.
looking at everything that I'm considering as just I feel like I am a sense maker. Like that just is my energetic
Yes.
process of sort of geometry meme lading, like,
Mhm.
oh, like, does this
Yes.
actually fit? And so I appreciate you using the word of integrity because it's really like for me, like in my experience with values, it's really like, is this acknowledging and uplifting someone's humanity, or is it directly oppose that? Because to me, it's
Mhm.
one of the categories where it's very hard to see like sort of a middle ground. It's like you're wanting people
Yes.
to survive or thrive, or you're
Yeah.
harming.
Or
So
you're
yeah, I
not. I
appreciate.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's how I feel. I'm like, well, there's
yeah,
only one right side. It's the non-killing side.
killing
Like,
side. Yeah, yeah, and then
just
having
don't
my
kill
moon in
people.
Aries.
Yeah. Hmm.
My moon is in Aries in the gate of
Oh,
opinions
yes.
too. So then that expression of just being like, like absolutely fuck around and find out, right? Where it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
where it's just
Hmm.
like wanting to. So I so appreciate that. Yeah, you sharing. And it's also like I'm still thinking about what you shared earlier about, like so much of like entrepreneurship and being visible. I feel like the loudest conversation people are having is, like, oh, I don't want to be canceled, or like, what if I share it?
Hmm.
But a lot of the work that I've experienced of yours, like, is in one of those like sort of pools of identity work.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on like what sort of happens to someone if your sort of operating system and how you're functioning is so incongruent with what feels right within yourself. And, like I'm assuming that, you can only sort of do that for so long before it just
Yeah.
starts to feel really shitty. And
Yes.
again, you can like riff on anything else, but I'm just curious if you have thoughts on, like how to start that like courageous and confidence, like moving forward and
Yeah.
letting your sort of like inner identity become your outer identity, and and whether that, maybe that's
Yeah.
part of your experience already or just something that feels like it's a deeper levels on the forefront of your own horizon.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, a good indicator, I know I only talked about the astrology there. I want to bring in a little human design. A good indicator that you're out of alignment, like there is that incongruity, who you are is not matching the actions that you're taking, is whether you're feeling your human design not self theme. I think that's such a guiding light for people that I just wish everyone knew this. So for generators and MGs, if you're feeling frustration a lot, like you're very frustrated, just in general, it's like, even if you don't know what it's about, right? You're very frustrated. If you're a manifester, you're angry. If you're a projector, you're bitter, or I like to also think disappointed, but like bitter. If you are a reflector, you're disappointed. So with all of those, if you're feeling that a lot of the time, or when you work on certain things or work with certain people, that's definitely an indicator that you're out of it. Like there's something that's not in alignment for you and it's not working. And usually I think that a lot of courage happens when you just have, can we swear on this podcast? When you just
Have
have
you
no
met me? No.
more, yeah, yeah. Well, I just wanted to check when you have no more fucks to give and you can't, you just are like, you know what? Speaking out for this cause is worth me losing some followers and brand deals. Me, speaking out and being true to myself is worth me losing my job. Me speaking up is worth, me that group not accepting me anymore. And you kind of like you're right. It's like the pain point has to get to that level for most of us, or else we won't change. And I wish it wasn't that way. I wish we could just have a little bit of discomfort and then have the self awareness to recognize that change is needed. But a lot of times it actually has to be more of a crisis. Like it was really interesting this morning on TikTok. I saw this video of I'll just name the creator because it's out there. Brittany Broski, who's like a really big influencer, very well loved, especially through the pandemic, and like for being a positive, comedic force for good. And a lot of people have just been extremely frustrated that she hasn't said anything about the war in Gaza and for 8 months. And finally, she broke her silence, and people are extremely disappointed because it took being like the blockout effort and the cancellation and losing millions of followers for her to finally do that. So it doesn't feel like it's an integrity anymore. But at the same time, her comment section, because I always go to the comment section, that's where you get the real truth. That's where you get like to see what people are really thinking and feeling about things. Half the comments are like, well, it took you long enough, right? And then half the comments are like, I respect that, even if you're doing this just because you're scared, at least you're doing it. Like at least you're standing up, for something, and you're listening to your followers, and you're listening to your community, you're listening to the world, right? So yeah, it's being, I guess I say all that to say that like I don't think it's ever too late, is what I mean. I don't think it's ever too late for someone to recognize and take a stand, and not everyone's going to forgive them, and not everyone's going to come back, and not everyone's going to understand what happened, right? And, we don't know all the sides of the story, but at the same time, like it's never too late to get into alignment, and it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the second surprise of the podcast is I have a random number generator and I pull number 1 through 6 that corresponds with the tool of improviding. So we
Mm.
had number 6, and that tool is I've got your back, right? And so
That's my
yeah.
life, not my
Uh,
life path number, but it's in numerology, it's my name. Like that's my name. Isn't
oh
this?
yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
Rachel.
Yay. I love that. Yeah. So then what was coming up for me just now as you're sharing, it's like there's so many ways in life that like we're told that we like can only have our own backs, right? Like it's us against the
Yeah.
world. And
Mhm.
it's just feeling like there's in the willingness and the ability to like notice discomfort or take a stand for your values,
Mm.
um, it's not just a way that you're starting to have your own back and get closer to being more in your like signature,
Yeah.
right? But also a way that you're able to show your community and just humanity in general, that you have a sense of a collective back, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm just curious when you're working with someone, let's say that's in like the branding entrepreneur identity, any of the,
Yeah.
the wonderful umbrellas that you serve people through. What are there any sort of common experiences that you're seeing people have with, starting to make that shift of being more visible, of wanting to have their own back in that sense of like, like it
Mm.
I
Yes.
am sensing the discomfort, I am making that shift. And
Yes.
also, I want to be seen as it feels like I am.
Yes, definitely. The one that immediately comes to mind is who you surround yourself with. Um, I think that's a big one because when you are like ready to be perceived by others, there are so many hangups and concerns and like insecurities that can come up. And so who you talk to about your work, I think is really key. I would go so far as to say, if you're worried about what your mom thinks, just block your mom on social media. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big deal. Like, but a lot of people just are very nervous about family, coworkers, best friends. I'm like, just block them all. If that's what you need, at least for a month, for you to just feel more free and to get out there and to just let yourself be cringe, as they say, you got to be cringe. Like the cringe factor needs to be high when you are going after your dream, because once you become famous, suddenly people think you're a genius and it's not cringe anymore. So just do it, you know. But yeah, I think the people you surround yourself with, the people that you talk to about your work, like it's important for you to protect your heart. And I think that even with your loved ones, that's a good thing. That's okay, even if it's for a temporary measure, right? Because not everyone gets it and they just want you to be safe and they won't get it. The other thing is about consumption. So this is a huge one that comes up constantly with my clients and myself, is conscious consumption of information. And I have an open head in Ajna. And so anyone else who has an open head in Ajna, but also just anyone who has an open center in human design, like we're constantly taking information in from the world. And when you're ready to be visible, of course, your brain is going to freak out and be like looking for evidence, that that's not a good idea, or trying to copy other people because that seems safe, right? Well, that seems to work for them. So if we copy it, then it will work for us. And so something that I always do when I'm ready to make a big leap is like shut down, like unsubscribe, like just stop reading, scrolling, consuming too much of other people's work. Unless you have really good boundaries and you're really, you're not addicted to the algorithm, which I don't know who you are. If you're a super person, please come and tell us how you do that, because it's created to be addictive. But anyway, but like the whole, if you're on 100 newsletter lists and you're just constantly in other people's programs and listening and taking in, then there's no space for your own creativity. And if you truly want to be seen, you need to be iconic. And iconic creators, iconic people, iconic movements are not about copying, right? They are about having their own voice. And you're not going to get that if you're just constantly listening to other people's voices.
I love that so much, and that I am a chronic enroller in things.
Oh my God, me too.
And but I
Like,
have a
yes.
defined head and ashna, and what I've
Yeah.
realized lately, what it is there's so much information that exists upstairs for me,
Hmm.
and the process of being enrolled in something helps me in the moments I'm engaging with said thing, it helps me filter out the volume and then actually see individual things that exist upstairs and then be
Ah,
able to give focus towards that. Otherwise, there's the
that's
whole fucking
cool.
library, right? And I can't
Yes.
actually see the sections and Dewey
Yes.
Decimal hasn't popped in yet, right?
Yes.
And but so like and I didn't know that about myself till you just spoke. So even in
And
that
that's
case,
and
I love
that's
that that
that's
energy
huge
comes in.
though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's huge. Anyone listening, like take notes, because that is, to me, the way you described it sounds like very clearly the difference between the defined head and the undefined head. So if you have the top, center in the human design chart white, like I do, you need more space and emptiness in order to get clarity. So you need to empty your mind. You need to like do the meditations. You need to get other people's voices out of your head. And that most of the people I coach have that. So it's like, I understand. But if you're like Lori and you have it colored in, you have it defined, then actually having the right voices in your head can help you, by contrast, get clarity with your own voice. So that is the difference. Like we're all different. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that is not a universal thing. That is a difference. Mhm.
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate the fact that you said what you said. It helped me see that in myself, right? And that's why I can be such a human design stan because yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm thinking too earlier where you're saying is like so often we wait until we're at a breaking point with discomfort or like life makes us have to make a
yeah,
choice. And
yeah.
that isn't something that, as we're babies, we're like, we're just going to be this way, right? Like it's so societally and intergenerationally expected.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about my own human design practice is now I have a different language or ways to be curious about what awareness viscerally means to me and how I experience it.
Mhm.
um, yeah, and this is a slight, piggyback to a few minutes ago, but I just love anytime I hear you say the word iconic because you are iconic to me. So I'm putting you on the
Oh
spot
my God, thank you.
absolutely. And I just want to hear you affirm and talk about yourself about what makes you iconic, and maybe we'll like share a prompt out for all the
Mhm.
listeners as like a joy practice in that too of
Yes,
like how
yes.
can we approach looking at our own values but from this idea of like what makes us iconic. That just feels like
Oh
a
my
really
God.
fun playground to play with.
So good. Yes. No one's ever asked me this, and I think this should absolutely be a practice. Like what I wanna steal it. I'll, like, credit us both as being like
High
both
five.
Lori and
Yeah.
Rachel. The iconic practice. Oh my god, I wanna make a let me write this down, okay? I
Yeah, no,
wanna
absolutely do it, Paul. Yeah, I
iconic meditation.
should.
Okay. It's gonna be so sassy. Okay, so what makes me iconic? Oh my gosh, I love this. This is so funny because yesterday I literally said I want to be iconic, and my mom was like, "You are iconic," and I was like, "I know, but I also know that I'm not there yet to where I envision in my head." So this practice is for me too.
Yeah, props to mom for tending to that seed too of
This
knowing.
is
Yeah.
for me too. Yeah. So what makes me iconic? I think one of the things that makes me iconic is my quick mind. I think like I can very much kind of walk into any room, have any conversation, and I'm able to like pick like random references from all different areas of history and pop culture and science and all these random things. I attribute that to like being a quad right. I think that's a very quad right kind of thing. I think it's a very Gemini kind of moon kind of thing. I have all the mutable signs, Pisces rising, Sagittarius midheaven. So I think that part of what makes me iconic is my ability to relate to anyone. So I can literally like I've been with veterans, I've been with, drag queens, I've been with like writers, tech nerds, like any situation you can drop me in and I will connect with people. So I think that's one thing because people also tend to when they talk to me they feel that connection. They feel seen, they feel like, "Oh, we're having a really cool conversation." So I do think that that is iconic. I think another thing is I'm such a theater kid. So I'm such a I'm such a theater kid and I love to perform. And I think that a lot of people who are iconic, not all, right? Like I think that, for example, Keanu Reeves is a good example of a non hugely extroverted, very iconic person, right? Like I think he's a good example. He is so iconic, Mr. Virgo. Um, but I have a big personality, and so I do tend to fill the room, and you see me coming. It's that Jupiter in the first house. I can't hide. I've tried hiding, like, and it doesn't work. So, so I think that that big personality serves me well, and I've learned through human design, thank God, to embrace it and to not be like what's the word like down on myself or thinking I'm too big, I'm too loud, I'm too expressive with my hands and my eyes, everything. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace that because it's memorable. People always remember me. So that is another iconic thing about me. And then my heart. I think my heart is really big and people can feel it. So even if I'm performing and joking and all these things, they still feel like it's really Rachel, like it's really true. So I think those, yeah, I think those are my three things I'll go with for now.
I love that. And I love how prepared you were to share. You know, it's not like you practiced or knew that's going to be asked, but like your
Oh, I didn't
energy
know I
just
was
felt
gonna,
prepared.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to affirm in you that the dedication you put towards yourself, then it's like, you know, those different, I think of, you know, each energy center as being like a chairperson, right, on your council.
Yes.
And they were just like, hold up, how I'm ready, right? I wanted to share out. And so I just love the feeling of hearing you speak about yourself that way. And it's helping me see sort of a deeper sort of joy practice of my own lately is actually like having engagements where either I'm speaking life into someone or someone is speaking life into themselves and just like how great that
Mm.
is because that's not how most conversations go.
It's
So,
not.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
beautiful to hear and witness you hype yourself up as you
Oh.
should and yeah,
As we all
that.
should. Yes, this is so good. It's so good. I used to do this. I don't do this that much anymore, but I used to have my clients brag. I called it bragging, which I hate that word, but like I call it bragging for like 2 minutes. And I would actually set the clock and I was like, go.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, brag about yourself. Tell me what is so great. It's kind of like that. And that it's like the best practice. And people always felt so good after. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know there were so many things that I was like, proud of, you know? Yeah. So I think we should all be doing this. Thank you, Lori. That was beautiful.
Yeah. That's so exciting. And this is the
Yeah.
point where I really don't like that time exists because I'm logistically supposed to be like, we're coming to a close now. Play the NPR music.
No.
Um, you know, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'm really hoping that this has been an indirect recruitment video or audio for more Rachel groupies. So if anyone wants to join me,
Thank
how
you.
can
You're the best.
yeah, how can people be in your cosmos, right? Like, what are all
Yes.
the ways? And
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for the time and like the amazing questions. Like this was definitely not what I thought we would talk about, and it was so good. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, whenever people are like, "Oh, is there like anything I need ahead of time?" Just be like, a willingness to exist, and we're just gonna see where it goes because I don't
no,
know.
it's amazing. I'm so happy. Like I love that. Yes, so if people would like to come along on this cosmic adventure, the rocket ship is leaving in T minus 20 seconds. Come and join me at Cosmic Queen. So on any social media platform, I'm pretty much everywhere except Substack. So I need to get onto Substack. Clearly. People are like, it's the next platform. I'm like, oh my
I've
God. Okay.
heard four people say that this week, and it's
Yes.
Tuesday. Yes.
Yeah, so am I. And I'm like, are you guys being paid? Are you sponsored by Substack? Like, what's happening? But I'm everywhere else. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok especially is like the fun place to be with me. But we're doing good things. So there's a membership, there's a free ebook about my midheaven archetypes if you want to be public, if you want to be famous, if you want to be seen, if you want your work to be out there more, your brand to be more in integrity, really work with your midheaven. I love helping people with that.
And would you say that midheaven could be
Yeah.
like an on-ramp to your iconicness?
Oh,
Like
yes,
people,
yes, yes,
okay,
yes. The
great.
midheaven is how you are iconic. Yes, 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 exactly. I just saw a video today with Lana Del Rey because I don't know what her chart is. And she was saying that she's a Scorpio rising. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. She's a Leo midheaven. Of course, like you.
Woo, 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 woo.
I
Yeah.
was like, all the most iconic people are like, hello. There's so many examples of that. So anyway, I love that. So yes, check out the ebook. It's amazing. I've got a human design course coming up if you want to learn with me, but also the main thing is a decision-making course that I'm starting called Clarity, which starts on May 30th. So that's the most immediate thing. May 30th, 2024. Clarity is going to be 3 weeks learning your human design decision-making process. There are 7 different ones. They're all very different in how they work. And it's going to help you move forward with more certainty and more trust in yourself as you make decisions using your human design. So you guys can check that out, via my link tree everywhere on social media.
And I will also be there, so if you just wanna, like, come have a party with
Yes.
Rachel, we will be doing that. I'll bring some hors d'oeuvres and some beverages.
Yay! It's gonna be
Yeah,
so
well, thank
good.
you so, so, so much for your existence and for blessing us with it. And to all of our listeners, as always, have a razzle dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can put an F on front and have a frazzle dazzle day.